Hello and welcome to Post Games, a podcast about why and how we love video games. I am your host, Chris Plant, and I am so happy to have you here. Now, normally, I'd open with a bit of a story or a historical detail, something to, ease us into the episode. But listener, there isn't room for that. This week, you get 2 podcasts for the price of 1. Which is funny because the podcast is effectively free. For the first part, we have a Nintendo mailbag. Listeners sent in a Wario's worth of questions about Nintendo, ranging from its unusually usual approach to the Switch 2 to the company's peculiar ability to do whatever it likes without the fandom going into outright revolt. In the second half, I finish the Not Safe for Work video game trilogy. In previous episodes, we spoke with an NSFW game designer, and we spoke with an academic who specializes in pornographic video games. This week, to wrap things up, we chat with an NSFW video game YouTuber. How do you make YouTube videos about games that can't be on YouTube? We will answer that question and so much more. Today on Post Games, a double episode that I'm titling Mario's Nipples. Act 1, Making Sense of Modern Nintendo. We have a Patreon bonus, why Nintendo ignores some of its biggest franchises. Act 2, Life as an NSFW video game YouTuber. And as always, Act 3, the news of the week. Plus, for Patreon members, 2 things to keep in mind. Over at patreon.com/postgames, we have a new episode of Video Game Journalism 101 going live, all about reviews. Ever wondered how reviews work? Well, I have all of the answers and so much more. Really, it's a lesson about the value of criticism in your day-to-day life. Plus, I have posted my seasonal Steam sale recommendations, and I'm playing something of Concierge in the comments. I want to make sure that everybody has something nice to play this fall. But, what am I doing? Let's get to it. It is a new year and you want to eat better, but you still have no time to work with. You have no energy. You have so much going on in your life. Oh, what do? You do Factor. 2 minutes, real food, and you are done. You're not failing at eating healthy. You're failing at having 3 extra hours in every night. You're failing at not being a chef and wanting to do cleanup. Factor takes care of that. It has delicious food that is good for you. You got lean proteins, colorful veggies, whole food ingredients, and none of the yucky stuff, no refined sugars, no artificial sweeteners. It will offer you whatever you need to match your lifestyle. For me, Mediterranean diet, it really works well. But maybe you need something else, like a high-protein diet or GLP-1 support or ready-to-eat salads. Whatever it is, Factor wants to meet you on your page. Always fresh, never frozen, and like I said, ready in 2 minutes with no prep, no cleanup, just chill. I use Factor. I think that you should too. Head to factormeals.com/postgames, 50 off, and use code postgames50 off to get 50% off your first Factor box, plus free breakfast for a year. Offer only valid for new Factor customers with code and qualifying auto-renewing subscriptions purchase. Make healthier eating easy with Factor. Act 1. Making Sense of Modern Nintendo. Welcome to the Nintendo mailbag. Before we start, if you're watching the video version of the show, you might be wondering, why is Baby Steps playing in the top left corner? Well, that's my playthrough, so please be kind. You see, for video, I want to include some gameplay, but this week's episode makes that a little tough. Nintendo, not known for generosity when it comes to strikes on video platforms, especially in an episode tied to not safe for work games. So I'm playing it safe. I'm playing baby steps for you to enjoy while watching all of this. There's part of me that kind of just wants to do this every week. I play so many new games and I have so much video of it. What if I just included whatever I'm playing so you can enjoy that while catching up on whatever's happening in the world of video games? I don't know. We'll see. If you like it, let me know. But hey, I do want to dig into the mailbag. Some context, I'm starting actually with a pair of questions. You'll hear them back to back. They get at something similar, and they also kind of echo a concern that you will notice throughout many of the questions in today's episode. So I'll throw it to them.
My name is Michael Bull, he, him. I guess my first question is, we all know that games are make or break quite often with their community, and we've seen games like Among Us shoot off just from community support. So why does Nintendo quite often make decisions that are seen to be anti-community, i.e. video copyright strikes, esports, crackdowns, and emulators?
Hello, Mr. Plant. My question about Nintendo is this. Despite being in hot water in the news pretty regularly, whether that's for the increased price of games discussion, or the Power Worlds lawsuit, or the Day One Pokemon $30 DLC, they seem to be doing better than ever. They just launched the Switch 2 off the huge success of the Switch 1, Pokemon cards are scalped faster than ever, and they have a new Mario Brothers movie coming out after the first one made $1 billion. So my question is, do you think that there is a domino that could fall that would start to tip all of this fandom against them? Or are they just too big to fail at this point? Absolutely love the show and all the stuff you've been doing, brother. Keep up the good work.
Thank you both so much. These are killer questions, and I think they get at a bigger misconception about Nintendo and its place in video games and its place in the world, which is Nintendo makes a lot more sense if you stop thinking about it like other video game companies. It has so much more in common with a Disney corporation than it does with an Electronic Arts or a Ubisoft or an Activision or even an Xbox. To kind of unpack that, there are some obvious comparisons, right? Which is Nintendo is in theme parks, it's in movies, it is everywhere. If you go to Target or you go to Walmart, you will find Mario in the toy aisle. You'll also find him and other Nintendo characters in the children's clothing aisle, hell, in the adults' clothing aisle. They are ubiquitous in a way that Mickey Mouse is ubiquitous. In fact, if you think about Pokemon as part of that, Pokemon plus Mario probably, actually, I think almost certainly has a wider reach than Mickey Mouse at this point. So it is just this anomaly in the game space. And it is so powerful, something we'll get to in a later question. I would think about it as this big, wide-reaching company that has tendrils in so many other places far beyond games. So once you start to think about it like that, then you can reassess the decisions that it's making. And let me be really clear up front. I'm not saying I agree with these decisions. I'm not putting a value judgment on any of this. I'm just saying this is likely why decisions would be made. For example, there is a quite large group of people on the internet who get very frustrated with Nintendo for being, quote, anti-competitive gaming. And by that, they say, look at Mario Kart, look at Smash. Whenever we make a push to make these games competitive, Nintendo zigs the other way. You have tripping in a Smash Brothers game, and that's anti-competitive. All these different things. You have rubber banding in Mario Kart. Why would you do this? Why would you resist competitive gaming? It's so wonderful. And that's true. Competitive gaming is wonderful, but philosophically, it's not in line with what Nintendo does. Nintendo is a big tent video game publisher. They want everybody to be playing their games. They want it so that if a little kid picks up Mario Kart, or if an 80-year-old picks up Mario Kart, They will have a wonderful time either way, and that doesn't come with a competitive game. It also isn't the reputation that they want their game to have. They want it to appear accessible, that anybody could enjoy it at any time. So when they're making these decisions, philosophically, that is the company that they are trying to project out into the world. That is the message that they're trying to send. And that, I think, is at the expense of competitive scenes. And I think that's why many people might feel that Nintendo is antagonistic at worst and then ignores at best competitive gaming culture more often than not. There are obviously exceptions like Splatoon. So that's one thing. The other thing is, well, what about ROMs? Why are they going so hard on ROM sites versus other companies in the gaming space? And again, they're anomalous. Their games retain value in a way that pretty much no other company's video games do. Again, with a few exceptions. But the original Mario, the original Metroid, the original Zelda, all of those games over the past 30 years, they still have value. People still want to pay for them. That is not true for games by most companies. Ubisoft isn't going after ROM sites for the most part, because what are they going to go after? They're upset that you're grabbing old copies of Rayman, or maybe like a very early version of Rainbow Six. That's not the case. Nintendo, there are games on the original Game Boy and the NES that people will still buy, that people are still excited about. So that, I think, is why we see them going after these ROM sites in a way that we just don't see from a lot of their peers. And the fact that they're also very large and they can go after them, and that they're financially stable enough to go after them, I think that's a piece of it too. And I know, again, exceptions to everything. Square Enix has a variety of games. We could kind of nitpick it forever and ever. But compared to its competition, it has, I think, the most to lose from ROM sites. Whether or not they're actually losing anything, I'll let you think about that. And then a last thing here, which is just when Nintendo is making decisions, consider the posture that they're in. Right now, Nintendo is in a period of tremendous success. And that success affords them the ability to make decisions purely out of self-interest in a way that when you are in a weaker position, when you are maybe on the defensive, you can't, right? So when Nintendo was struggling, following the Wii, going into the Wii U, they were creating partnerships for mobile games. And there was even a push by investors for Nintendo to really go into the mobile space. They don't have to make that compromise now. They don't have to really care about anything until they stop succeeding. So long as people continue to spend large amounts of money to get new hardware and they continue to buy these new games, they can kind of do whatever they want. And again, look at the Switch 2 as a perfect example. We have every reason to believe that the Switch 2 was basically ready to go in some form over the past year or two. And Nintendo waited for the exact moment that it wanted to release it, that it felt was the most opportune time to turn the Switch 2 into a mega hit. And judging by the sales, they picked right. We've also heard that they have any number of games effectively done and ready to go at any time. And they can really plan out their calendar just so. They're in that very unusual position of power. Not just now when the games industry is bad. That position of power is unusual at any point in the games industry. So consider all of that together. They are bigger than just games, and they're operating to protect a brand similar to the way that we have seen Disney do in the past. They have IP and creative properties that are still holding their value after decades, and they're in a position of tremendous strength. So until they see any pushback from a PR hit, they will continue to do what they please.
Hi, Chris Plant. It's me, your former coworker, Chelsea Stark, with a question about Nintendo. I was watching the latest Nintendo Direct, and the trailer for Yoshi and the Mysterious Book really got me thinking. I mean, that game looks great and amazing, but it's really interesting that Nintendo has taken Yoshi down the kids track, which is totally fine. Kids definitely need games, but also is the Switch 2, which the game is exclusive for, a really a system for kids? Like, that's a $500 console. I just am thinking about that as like, is the Switch 2 a kid-friendly console, and does that kind of change Nintendo's trajectory? What do you think?
Hello, Chelsea. Thank you for the question. I don't have like any smart answer for this because ultimately how people spend their money and what they feel comfortable giving to their children is up to them. But I can say my personal experience, which is, no, I really don't like my kid playing with the Switch 2. And I think part of that is, one, cost a ton of money, and I'm super worried about it being broken by my 7-year-old, who is a wonderful maniac. But 2, we still have the Switch 1, and it gives me an alternative in terms of what, like, he can play. I don't think he needs to rush to play all the new Switch 2 games. So when we have, like, our game time on the weekends, my instinct is just, hey, why not continue to use the Switch 1? There are all of these different wonderful games on it. He doesn't need to play the latest and greatest. He isn't even really necessarily aware of the latest and greatest. And everything is still new and exciting to him. So my thought on this more is, if you look at the Switch 2 and the Switch 1, if you have a kid who is under 10, I don't know. There's so many good games on the older console. It's cheaper, and the games themselves are cheaper too. That said, I'm sure like once you start getting around 7 to 10, kids are going to school, they're talking about things that they enjoy, and maybe there is some pressure to play the new and the interesting. But even then, I'd be really curious from people who listen to this show who have kids in that age bracket, if a game like Yoshi is the thing that they're talking about, or if really where the pressure is to play something like Roblox and the games on that. But yeah, what am I going to do when that game comes out? I guess it'll probably be a game that we play on the TV. Maybe that's the solution, which is keep it plugged in and use controllers so that my child cannot just snap that thing right in half.
Hi, Post Games, loving the podcast. My name is Reed M. My question is about Nintendo and the unique direction they took with the Switch 2. Historically, especially since the N64, Nintendo has really differentiated itself from its competitors with unique hardware and control schemes. That innovation has often come at the cost of third-party game support, which put Nintendo in more of its own category rather than in direct competition with other major console manufacturers. However, with the Switch 2, it feels like Nintendo has shifted. The design seems less about the unique hardware or control schemes, and more about the iterative improvements and higher performance, the kind of approach we usually see from Sony or Microsoft. That opens the door for more third-party support and puts the Switch 2 in more direct competition with other major consoles. So my question is, do you think this is just an early lifecycle focus for the Switch 2, or is Nintendo deliberately moving toward being more of a direct competitor in the third-party space, rather than continuing to carve its own separate path?
Hey Reed, I love this question. And I love it because the Switch 2 is so strange, right? Like, it does not fit into the Nintendo way of doing things. It doesn't have that big novelty. And I think it's totally reasonable to ask why not. I have a few theories about this. And the big one is that Nintendo made this big, bold, original idea in having a video game console that you could take wherever you want, right? That it is a Switch, that it works at home under your TV and also on the go. And they must have thought, especially as it started to, really succeed, oh, Sony and Xbox, they're going to get in on this game. We're going to have to compete with them, and then we'll have to figure out something new again. But they just didn't. It is so bizarre. Sony and Microsoft went through the entire console cycle, and they never made the portable version of their hardware. So Nintendo has the original idea, and they don't really have competition. And I know, like, PC gaming handhelds, we'll get to that. That is a relatively small portion of the audience compared to the console market and what Nintendo's doing. So I think part of it is, well, if nobody's going to come after the new thing we're doing, why not just run it back? Like, why not do it again until they try to compete with us? If you think about it in like football, if you have a play that's going to get you 15 yards every time you run it, you keep running it until the other team's defense shows you that you shouldn't. That feels kind of like what's happening. I think there's another weird mistake that the console makers, specifically Sony and Xbox, made, which is they spent this console cycle competing with old versions of themselves. They didn't want to lose all of the customers on the old hardware. So for a long time, they were designing things to run on the old stuff and the new stuff. And that created this pull away from the power. And you're seeing that more and more as people talk about whatever the next console cycle is, that power is less and less important for any number of reasons that are way too technical for us to go into. But the point is, power is no longer the main focus of a console generation cycle. And for that reason, most of the stuff that is running on those consoles will now be able to run on the Switch too. The vast majority of it, especially if you picture all of the indie things and all of that. So for that reason, they actually kind of fell into a position of, wow, we don't need to chase the power game. We can continue to take this cheaper, older hardware approach. And for the first time, all of the third-party stuff, it'll still run on what we have anyway. So here they have very little competition when it comes to the portable stuff. In terms of the traditional console makers, they have the ability to actually run most games on the type of hardware that they like to put out. I think that they looked at all of this and thought, well, what if we just cleaned up all the things we wished we had gotten right the first time? So that is having a digital store that is actually like a positive experience, having a device that actually feels comparably nice to hold in the hand. Just clean up all the little details and add just a bit more power. I honestly think of it more like a mid-cycle piece of hardware. That this is a continuation of Switch. It happens to have Switch 2 at the end of its name, but it's so much closer to a PlayStation 4 or 5 Pro, something like that, than it is anything else. It's a cleaning up of an idea that they were motivated to do because, again, there just was too much opportunity left on the field. And sports, you know. I think that's why it's different. I also think for that reason, we shouldn't read too much into it for what it means about the future of Nintendo. I don't think that this means Nintendo will be doing Switch 3, Switch 4, Switch 5 Apple style indefinitely. I think when we see more competition in this space, they will go look for clear water. But right now, until somebody shows them genuine competition, I don't see why they should move.
Hey, Chris. So I've been a long time Nintendo fan, and I've enjoyed the Switch era pretty well. But they have this Nintendo Online service full of classic games, but they've only added Pokemon spin-off series, no mainline Pokemon games. Seems to me that adding mainline Pokemon titles could add a lot of value to their online service, or they could sell them on the e-store if they wanted to and likely make a profit. What gives? Why can I not play Pokemon Yellow on the Switch? And does this have something to do with Nintendo and the Pokemon Company being somewhat separate entities? Thank you. From Bryduck.
Okay, so first, I think there will be some people who hear this and are surprised that Pokemon games aren't available on Nintendo Switch Online. It seems like they are, or they should be, and that's because a number of spin-offs are there, like you suggested, but the classic games, they're not. Why is that? You mentioned a theory that I see regularly on the internet, that some games are here because they're owned by Nintendo outright, while the ownership around Pokemon is very complicated, and maybe the Pokemon Company has a certain share of a game, and that's why it can't be on the console versus others. And that might be the case, but I suspect in the same way that Nintendo is going after ROMs, because it plans on reselling things over and over and over again, I think we see the same thing with mainline Pokemon games. So, for example, you asked, why can you not play Pokemon Yellow on the Switch? And I think the answer that Nintendo would give you is Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu is on the Nintendo Switch, and that is a remake of Pokemon Yellow. And they would much prefer that you spend the money to purchase that than play a free version of Pokemon Yellow or a subscriber version of it on Nintendo Switch Online. And I think with any of the mainline Pokemon games, they're all up for remakes at any time. That is the thing that I think Nintendo and the Pokemon Company would be totally okay with at some point. And once you put a game on Nintendo Switch Online, I think it's really hard, if not impossible, to take it off. It would be really bad luck if it's available there, right? If you could just play Pokemon Emerald, and then one day they're doing a remake, and then they take it off. That they don't want to do that. So they rather just keep it off for now. Maybe think up a bundle that they could sell a whole bunch of these in. There are any number of ways for Nintendo and the Pokemon Game Company to still make money off of mainline Pokemon games versus some of the smaller stuff that you see show up on Nintendo Switch Online. If I had to bet, I would say that is the reason, and not that there is weird ownership. If Nintendo really wanted to get these things on its store, something tells me that they would know how to work that out.
Hey Chris, Kyle Starr from the Y Button Podcast here. My question to you. There are so many games, maybe too many games to be sustainable. So who is playing all of these games? It seems like everyone plays some type of forever game, whether that's Fortnite, Roblox, Genshin Impact, League of Legends, etc. Meanwhile, there are tons of indies launching every day, from rogue types to cozy games to small teams building larger-than-life titles, and big publishers still seem to be okay investing large sums of money into many AAA titles, with the sad normalization of layoffs if the project quote-unquote fails.
Hi, Kyle. First, people should listen to the Y Button podcast. It's the letter Y button. I did an episode of it. It's great. I love what Kyle does. But second, Kyle kind of alley-ooped me up for a promo, really, for next week's episode. I'm not going to answer this question here. That's the big twist. Because over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to be digging into this very question of what's the deal with too many games? What does it mean for the people who play games? What does it mean for the people who make games, from the smallest studios to the largest ones? And who is out there trying to not solve the problem, because you can't really solve it, but help game creators and audiences adapt to this new reality? Because this is new. I remember as a kid when you would wait months for a new thing, something cool to play. And now I check Steam every day, and I almost always find something exciting that I want to try. And that's just Steam. It can be on itch, it can be on any other stores. So we're going to put a pin in this question, and we are going to answer it in great detail with my 2 upcoming guests. First up, to talk about the problem of too many games, I have Jason Schreier from Bloomberg and Triple Click Podcast. And then the week after that, I'll be talking with Simon Carless, who is the founder and head of Game Discover Co., which provides a number of consultancy services and tools to help new games be discovered by the audience that they're trying to reach. Very excited to catch up with him. So that's that. Now is that time of the episode where we split into 2 groups. If you are a Patreon subscriber, great news. I have a bunch more mailbag questions and answers coming up for you. Some great stuff about why you can't get Pokemon games on the Nintendo Switch Online store, why Nintendo doesn't make new games in series like F-Zero, Kid Icarus, and Earthbound, and so much more. And if you aren't a Patreon subscriber, no worries at all, because we have the final segment in my Not Safe for Work game interview trilogy, I guess you could call it. And that is an interview with Annie from Sex Positive Gaming on YouTube. I think you're really going to like this conversation. 2, Life as a Not Safe for Work Video Game YouTuber. Today's guest is Annie, the host of the Sex Positive Gaming channel on YouTube and Patreon. Annie has produced reviews, curated lists, and hosted analysis of adult video games for nearly 5 years. In that time, she's managed to build an audience of over 70,000 subscribers on a video platform notorious for prohibiting the sort of lewd material that appears in the games that she covers. That's obviously interesting to me, and I think by proxy, all of us, because with not safe for work games themselves under threat of censorship, I wanted to chat with Annie to learn how she balances her interests, her audience expectations, and the policies and rules of major platforms while trying to create a richer and more open conversation about sexual video games. Here is that conversation. What inspired you to create YouTube videos about lewd or not safe for work or sexy video games?
It was mainly around Cyberpunk 2077 and the game journalist articles that came out about how Cyberpunk 2077 was extremely sexual. And it struck me as just either disingenuous or honestly incompetent, because there were games like Mass Effect, The Witcher, and Dragon Age, which all had similar levels of sexual content, and they had been out for over a decade. So I thought, were these journalists pretending about the sexual content, or were they just ignorant about video games? And given your experience, you can probably definitely answer this better than I can.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a certain puritanical nature to video games for a variety of reasons, is what I would say, especially following Gamergate. But it would be tough to know without specific examples. But then how did you respond to it?
I started looking at YouTubers who covered sex and sexuality in video games, and they were mostly broken up into two groups. People who were very coy about sex and just acted like they knew nothing about it. And then people who leaned into that perversion. I think the best example is that like a Quagmire from Family Guy kind of attitude. And there weren't really that many people covering adult video games in the same way that you'd see someone cover Mario Kart or Red Dead Redemption. Then I just started making videos, and I'm honestly still figuring this all out as I go along, but I do like to think that I'm doing a more competent job now than I was in 2021 when I started.
What are some of the things that you learned between then and now that give you that feeling?
The videos that I made in 2021 are very different than the videos that I make now. And I really have to be conscious about how I talk about flavors, how I talk about the games in general. And it is a very different tone than the videos that I put out in 2021. The videos that I used to put out were very blatant at what the game offered, what the flavors were. And now I have to talk around it. And I'm just like, the people who know and the people who don't know, I guess, that kind of thing. And it kind of sucks. It makes the video just harder.
I want to come back to that, but first there's a word that you used here that I love in your videos, which is flavors. And maybe this is a common terminology elsewhere, but I know it through your videos. Can you explain what you mean when you say flavors?
Sure. So I use the word flavors in replacement for words like kinks and fetishes, because I felt as though those words had a lot of negativity around them. So I thought, creating an entirely new word might help with the normalization of sex and sexuality in video games. And my reasoning is basically because everyone has their own likes and dislikes, and you can think of them as flavors of ice cream, for example. So say that I like strawberry, but I don't like Rocky Road. Somebody else might like Rocky Road, but I'm not going to get on, their case for liking Rocky Road when I don't. I just won't eat Rocky Road and I'll have strawberry instead. And I think that's the kind of thinking that I was going for when coming up with a new word.
Okay, so you said that it's harder now to make things. I think they said that it sucks. I assume, is that because of YouTube's monetization policies, of the boundaries that they put creators in?
Yes. Yeah, it is much stricter now than it used to be. Creating videos is just so much time and effort now than it used to be, honestly. I used to just be able to write a script just then and there because, I was just very honest and blatant about what the game was about. And now I have to actually use like a kind of like a wordsmith, and I have to build the video around the flavors. And I use the show not tell method where I'm like, okay, this game has furry in it, but I can't say that. So I have to show that the game has furry and furry characters. And it's just, it's a lot, but I have gotten used to it over the years because of all of these changes.
On that note, can you share some of the other steps that you take to stay within YouTube's policies? Because especially the video itself, I find so interesting because often I'm watching your videos. You'll do top games of the month, right? And it's very strange in that it almost feels like I'm watching a very cozy thing. But when I step away, I'm like, oh, what is happening just lightly behind the screen is much more graphic than what I'm literally seeing.
Yeah. For self-censoring, one of the really amazing things about the internet is that it brings so many different peoples and cultures together. And I think sometimes we forget that every one of those people lives in a different place with very different laws and beliefs. And so that means that as much as we have in common, there is a fair amount that we will not agree on. So if you live in a place and you want to change the laws and reshape society, there are ways to do that. They're rarely easy, but that's just how the world works. YouTube is a corporation run by billionaire tech bros, and they exist in a reality so far removed from the rest of us that you could literally just consider it to be just another planet. And if I want to be on YouTube, I need to follow their rules, both the written and unwritten ones. And it's just like when you visit another country, there are going to be explicit rules and then not so explicit rules. When I'm a guest in another country, I should do everything I can to be a good guest. And this includes trying to learn and follow all of the rules, which also means I may spend more time figuring out the rules than anything else. But YouTube is not a part of America. YouTube is not a part of Europe. It is one of the first of an increasing number of truly transnational corporations that have emerged with post-industrial society. So if you want to better your chances to survive under the umbrella of our alphabet overlords, you really need to get good at knowing what is and is not allowed, not just what the TOS says is and is not allowed. So for me, covering sex and sexuality is automatically perilous. And there's no guarantee that I will still be around regardless of how many precautions I take. And then certain things are more dangerous to talk about. Like anything LGBTQ is much less acceptable today on YouTube than it was a few years ago. And honestly, flavors in general are, again, also very tough to talk about because YouTube tends to classify all of this as quote unquote promotion of fetishes, which is not really tolerated. So yeah, it's
Holy
just
shit. I did not know that is a policy. So that would explain with furries.
Yeah, that's why I have to talk around it and why making videos is just it's so much work now.
Oh my gosh, your job is so I don't envy you.
My parents like to tell me that I started working on YouTube on hard mode.
Well, while we're there, what do your parents think of this passion?
Okay, my parents are very open, and so they don't mind that I do this. They think that it's helping the world to become a better place, and so they see the value in it. So they're pretty cool with it, to be honest.
Sick. I love that. To go back to the YouTube, I am just, I don't know, morbidly tickled that this all started with Cyberpunk 2077. And what you are describing is the most cyberpunk-ass thing I've maybe ever heard on this show.
I know.
Talking about the planets and obeying their laws, there is another planet, one that I operate on, which is Patreon. How is that different than YouTube? And how have you found a way to coexist in that space too?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, that's hard to answer. I see YouTube and Patreon as the same. YouTube is obviously more restrictive than Patreon, but with all the changing rules right now, it's really all up in the air. So I don't know if what I say now is going to be the case tomorrow. It's a really tough thing to talk about just because we're in the unknown and we're waiting to see what will happen, see what rules they come up with next. It's a scary place for the developers and publishers, and including myself. I think it's a tough time.
I want to kind of pivot to your audience a little bit, because I suspect for some people listening to this, there is a superficial image of someone who plays lewd games. And I think it is probably cis, male, gooner is like the word that would probably come to mind. And obviously that's not the case. Who are the sort of people who you think, one, watch your videos, and two, that you meet who are a part of this space?
I don't really know, really. From the analytics from YouTube, it is mostly male. That is my audience. But I don't know if the male audience that I have on YouTube it would see themselves as cis male gooners. So it's really, I guess I really don't know. But the videos where I list out the most popular games are the most viewed. And I think those kinds of videos would reach the audience of just everybody, not just those people. And it's just, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
I guess why I ask is it still is very much a thing that's done in the dark. And there's a lot of anonymity in the scene. And it's hard to know who the creators are, let alone who the audience is. So that's more of my curiosity.
I mean, if you look at research, it does show that, I'm not specifically talking about YouTube, but women, like to read erotica, like romantic erotica and stuff like that. And then on the men's side, this is not a monolith for all of them, but the research shows that they tend to watch things and look at pictures. And so video games is that. You have the pictures, you have videos, you have animations. And most of my audience is in that category. And I wish it was the opposite, but we're just not there yet. And well, I don't wish it was the opposite, but I wish it was more of a collective, everyone was doing this, but we're just not there yet. I do think the videos where I talk more in depth about the benefit that the safe and healthy exploration of sex and sexuality can bring to society are just way more important than the list videos where I have just video games, because it honestly amazes me how clear the research is about the lasting harm of sexual suppression. It makes mental health worse. It raises the crime rates, especially sexual crime rates. And it just makes the world a worse place. And that's honestly what really saddens me about the people who are advocating for censorship, because I truly believe that they want to help make the world safer, but their actions will have the literal opposite effect. And preventing humans from having safe and healthy ways to explore sex and sexuality makes the world a more dangerous place, especially for women and children.
Yeah. Now talking about the push to delist video games on major platforms or outright remove them, how has that impacted you and other content creators in the not safe for games space? Does it limit what you're able to cover? Does it change anything about your day-to-day?
It's one of those things that's, again, like in the process of becoming a thing. So it's really hard to differentiate between what I do now and what I did like a few months ago. It's clear that no one in charge has any idea of what is and is not allowed. And Visa and MasterCard stated policy would actually prohibit most video games if fully enforced. Not just adult video games, but most of all video games. It is more likely that we will see Steam to start quietly accept more games and flavors once the attention starts to die down. Now, how long that will take really depends on how people and the rest of the industry respond. Because if we see more attention and actual real regulation from governments, then it could take years to get to a new normal.
So I want to go back to something you said earlier about the flavors in Rocky Road. I have, in my career, had to cover so many games and genres I don't prefer. And then there are some genres where I don't even try to cover them. Like, I'm not going to cover an MMO. You're just not going to see it happen. You're not going to see me cover some 8X strategy game or whatever. Mm-hmm. You have, I think, an interesting tweak on that, which is you are not just covering genres, but flavors using your language. What is your approach when you come across a game that just is not your flavor, but you're thinking about it for coverage?
Oh, okay. I try to be very unbiased with how I review games. And so even if I do come across a game where I personally do not like the flavors, like I would not seek them out, I still want to remain unbiased because I don't want people to feel bad about the flavors that they like. For example, when I do say something critical about a game, it's usually just about the gameplay and not about the flavors. So it's really hard. Like, I try to be critical about, the gameplay and how it actually plays as a game and not how the flavors interact with that game or enhance the game. Again, I kind of have to talk around if I don't like the flavors, or if I do like the flavors. It really just depends. To be honest, all of the games that I've covered over the years, and I've covered so many games, and some of them I don't like the flavors, but I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say, if you like these flavors, I think it does a great job exploring these flavors. And so have at it.
Talking about censorship and self-censorship, is there a personal line that you do have where it's like, I don't go past this? These are the things that I won't cover, or I guess that you just would not put into your videos?
Yes, there are games that I stay away from because I don't want to get a huge amount of backlash if I do cover them. And the people who like those flavors are going to... They have those flavors and they can enjoy them. They don't really need me to talk about them. We live in a world where everyone is conscious about what they like. And not a lot of people are open about, or they don't want to have an open and honest conversation about sex and sexuality in video games and how it's making the world a better place. It's hard to talk about these more controversial flavors because you know that they're not going to see it that way because they have their opinions, and it's going to be very hard to change them. And sometimes you don't change them. They have the opinions and they're going to stick to them. And if anything, if you try to challenge them, they're going to double back on those opinions. And so it's really hard. So yes, I do have games that I stay away from because I am honestly scared, because I don't want to upset anybody and I don't want to start drama. And the channel is kind of starting to get to that because everyone has their own opinions about things.
On that note, to start to wrap things up, I do want to talk about the positives that you mentioned and this desire to change people's minds. Have you had any experiences with the audience or with the channel where you feel like you've seen that progress?
Ooh, yes. I don't know if I can pinpoint the certain thing that has happened that can do that. But people use, oh, okay, I thought of one. People use flavors as a term now. And that is something that I have seen grow over time. People, when I first started the channel in 2021, people were kind of just like, flavors? What even is this? But now I actually do see people use flavors as a way to talk about kinks and fetishes. And I find that so, like, I feel so proud, honestly. I feel like a proud parent, honestly. I'm like, yes, use that. So I think that's one of the things.
As you continue to do this, does the topic ever lose its luster for you?
Okay, so let's see. When I was first doing the channel, I was pumping out video after video about just games. And I didn't really do the in-depth talk that I do now. Covering games back then did hit a wall at some point, and I can't really do individual game reviews as much anymore. I think we all play video games because we think they're fun. And so games with adult content are just another feature that can enhance the gameplay experience for people who enjoy the flavors being presented. All humans will seek outlets to explore their sexual identity. I think video games are a better way to explore sexuality than many people currently have access to. Of course, there's always room for improvement, but providing more safe and healthy avenues for sexual exploration will help shape a better future.
I want to push on that one just a little bit further. When you say that you think that they're a better avenue or outlet, what about them do you feel makes them that?
They're just fun, and they're just so easy to get access to. And video games are, like, right now, like, the most interactive media form that we have. And you have books, but you can't have any say what happens in that book. It's just the book. But in video games, like a visual novel, you have a say in what you can do. And I think that's really powerful. And I think more people should take advantage of that to explore their personal sexual identities, because it really helps.
I love that. If you have just a few more minutes, would you mind giving a couple recommendations?
Sure.
Cool. I guess the big question I have in terms of recommendation for you is, imagine somebody who has never played anything in this space. Maybe the most erotic thing they've seen in a video game is a Mass Effect sex fade to black. What is a starter video game that you would recommend?
I think Subverse is a great, like, if you like Mass Effect, if you like actual, like, mainstream games, then Subverse is a great one. I think if you like open world games, I think Carnal Instinct is a great game. Quickie, A Love Hotel Story, that's a great game. If you like the Persona series, I would definitely play Quickie. Let's see. If you like RPGs, Memoirs of a Battle Brawler is a really good one. And I think that's about it.
Act 3, the news of the week. What a weird week it was for billion-dollar video game publishers. And by weird, I mean not so great. On Tuesday, Electronic Arts announced it is being acquired and taken private for a whopping $55 billion. The buyers are, let's just say, nauseating. They include Jared Kushner-founded Affinity Partners and the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund. The private equity side of the deal is disappointing in the way private equity is always disappointing in these sorts of things, but it's the Saudi fund that's truly grotesque. The Public Investment Fund was created in 1971 as a sovereign wealth fund to invest on behalf of Saudi Arabia. Since then, it has grown to nearly $1 trillion in assets. Its chair is Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. You might already know that name because the Crown Prince has been tied to the killing of American journalist Jamal Khashoggi. In 2024, just last year, Human Rights Watch claimed that the private investment fund has directly facilitated and benefited from human rights abuses. Over the last decade especially, Saudi Arabia has used its wealth from oil to whitewash its terrible international reputation, from launching the PGA competitor Live Golf to this month's infamous Riyadh Comedy Festival. The private investment fund has been buying up small percentages of video game companies for a while now, including a 3.5% stake in Take-Two and an 8.2% stake in Nintendo. But Electronic Arts, let me be clear, will be the biggest outright controlled game publisher in its portfolio. What will they and the private investors do with Electronic Arts? Well, we'll have to wait to find out. The deal is expected to close in EA's 2027 fiscal year. But if I had to guess, it'll have to do with sports. Saudi Arabia has used the investment fund most predominantly on sports. Electronic Arts' close relationship with international soccer leagues and the National Football League will become, I'm sure, welcome leverage. It sucks. That's basically it. Elsewhere, Xbox is raising the price of Game Pass by a lot. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate is getting a 50% price hike, going from $19.99 to $29.99 a month. Xbox previously raised the price of Game Pass in summer 2024, that is less than a year and a half ago. What do subscribers get with the increase? Well, they get access day one to Xbox published games, along with access to Ubisoft Plus Classics, EA Play, and Fortnite Crew, Fortnite's monthly subscription plan. So basically, the days of cable bundles have returned, except this time, it's video games. There are other reimagined tiers for Xbox Game Pass, including Game Pass Premium, which will provide access to a smaller catalog of games, but most noticeably, will not include day one releases. That one costs $14.99 a month. And you must be thinking, come on, there must be good news, right? Chris, you always like to end this thing with good news. And you are spot on. I wouldn't do you wrong. I always make sure you leave this just a little bit happy. And that's why, let's see, yep, I found it. You remember that killer Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle beat 'em up that kind of recaptured the retro magic of the arcade classics? It's called TMNT Shredder's Revenge. Well, the studio that made that game, Tribute Games, has a new game coming out, and the demo is available right now for free. This time, instead of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, they're going for a different 90s arcade classic, Marvel Superheroes. That is right, Marvel Cosmic Invasion. It's a 2D pixelated brawler. Apparently it stars 15 superheroes. I see Storm, Black Panther, Spider-Man, Wolverine, and the screenshots. You know, all the people that I obsessed over as a kid, and I still kind of do whenever I go into the comic shop, which is honestly multiple times a week because my child is obsessed. It's not the biggest news of the week. I'm not saying it is. I'm just saying it's free, and it's cool, and you deserve nice things, so I thought you might like it. And that is the news of the week. Everybody, we did it. Truly, where else can you get this editorial mix but Post Games? Next week, the Too Many Games Dilemma. Post Games has been swirling around a peculiar problem since its earliest episodes. There are more great games released each month than even the most dedicated fan could make time to play. Now, this is great news for gamers, in theory, but it's becoming an existential threat to countless game creators, from tiny studios to AAA publishers. It is such a big concern that I am producing a two-part series. Next week, we explore how and why the, quote, too many games problem came to be, and what it means for the future of your favorite medium. Our guest, gaming's most famous reporter and author, Jason Schreier, joins us from Bloomberg. In the week after that, how are game creators adapting to this new ultra-crowded world? Game Discover co-founder Simon Carless joins Post Games to explain the practice of game discovery and the tools that he and his team have created to help developers get their games in front of the right audiences. Simon is one of the most brilliant people in the industry. He played a humongous role in running the Game Developers Conference years ago, and he gave me my very first paid writing gig. So, fun trivia. But for now, I begin my farewell. A reminder, as always, post-game supporters get the show and the newsletter early on Fridays at 5 p.m. Eastern, and usually a little bit earlier than that. They get extra acts and bonus materials. This week, Patreon listeners got an extra heaping of mailbag. Plus, on the Patreon, I posted my picks for the best deals of the Steam sale for every type of gamer. And each month, subscribers get a video in my ongoing series, Video Game Journalism 101. Today, if you're listening on the free feed, I am publishing the latest entry, a lesson on video game reviews. And no ads on anything. Subscribe to the Patreon at patreon.com/postgames. Subscribe to the newsletter for free and get all of the show notes that you can need at post.games. Theme song by Mark Sparling. The brilliant logo and art by the one and only James Barham. And a special thank you to this week's guest, Annie from Sex Positive Gaming. And hey, you're still here. That must mean you really like the show. Can you do me a solid and leave a review on Apple or Spotify? It is a humongous help to get the show in front of more people, or you can just tell a friend. I mean, that's the simplest path. Thank you for listening. I'll see you next week.